Good evening, everyone. This is Mamta Sharma from ICHARS Support Foundation, and we are delighted to bring to you True Talks for Therapists, an exclusive live series for mental health professionals. To answer our questions, we have with us Nitin Shah, founder and director of ICHARS and ICHARS Support Foundation. Welcome to the first episode, Nitin.
Thank you, Mamta. How are you?
I am good, and welcome everyone who is watching and tuned in. And Nitin, today we are going to understand why people come for therapy, what are the components of problems. Am I right?
Yes, you're right.
And we are delighted to bring to you True Talks for Therapists. So can you describe broadly what we are going to talk about today?
So, Mamta, what we are going to discuss about today would revolve around understanding problems, the presenting
Hmm.
problems that clients come to us with, and then
Hmm.
really realizing how those presenting problems are just surface level problems. There are like layers beneath layers beneath layers that at times
Hmm.
as therapists we need to be able to understand. And then obviously
Hmm.
for each of those layers, there is a different set of strategies that we need to use to be able to work with those clients. So specifically
Okay.
today, we will focus on what those different layers are.
Okay. So what do you mean when you say layers? Because as I understand, people visit a therapist because they want to resolve a problem, don't they?
That's true, but let's look at it this way. To
Hmm.
understand layers,
Hmm.
let's say people come to us at position A and want to move to position B,
Right.
right?
Right.
Uh, A could be the current situation, and B is the state where they have already resolved the current problem, or that they have achieved something more that they wanted to achieve in future.
Correct.
So obviously, we need to help them move from A to B, and in that process, we need to be able to help them understand what A and what B are,
Correct. Makes
right?
sense.
And
Hmm.
many a times, people are not even clear about position A and B. So
Okay.
that becomes the first layer of problem when we talk about problems. That does the client that come to us for a session, do they understand what is A? Where are they in their life currently? What are the skills? What are the resources they have that they lack? And what is B? What is the outcome that they want to achieve?
Okay. So can you help us with an example? Can you describe it in detail?
Sure. So I'm going to describe this in detail, but while I describe in with this in detail, I also would like people who may be watching to just
Mhm.
check if there are any questions that they have about this particular layer before we go ahead.
Right.
Right?
Perfect.
All right.
Hmm.
Perfect.
Hmm.
So as I was saying, in terms of an
Hmm.
example, um, so there are many times when clients will come to us for therapy and they would say that I don't, so I'm not happy, but I don't know where to start,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
I don't know how to clearly describe my problems in words,
Hmm.
right? And then there are also places where people would tell you that they know their problem, but they're not sure what would their solution be. So
Hmm.
someone who comes and tells you, for example, that I'm in a relationship, I know that the relationship is not working for me, but I don't know what to do about my relationship,
Correct.
right? So in that
Hmm.
case, they may understand what A is, but they
Hmm.
don't know what is the B, what is the outcome that they are looking for.
Hmm.
And many a times, while they may say that they are looking for a particular outcome, it's only when you sit with them, when you explore the outcome more in detail, is when they
Hmm.
start realizing whether that outcome is something that they want or not.
Oh, all right. All
Haven't you
right.
had situations in your life where you wanted to achieve certain outcomes, and when you started
Hmm.
moving closer to those outcomes, you realize, well, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I wanted.
Right. 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 Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
So many a
Yes.
times, while the client thinks they know the answer to begin with, they may not
Hmm.
necessarily know it in the sense that they don't understand the implication of that outcome in their life,
Hmm.
right?
True.
And to be able
Hmm.
to ask them the right questions, to be able to help them understand that becomes extremely important. So that for me is the first layer of the problem. What is
Okay.
it that the client wants to achieve, and
Okay.
what is the current problem that they're facing,
All right. All right.
right? Now,
Right.
once they define A and B, in order to
Hmm.
move from A to B, they would need to
Hmm.
create some changes,
Correct. Yes, of course.
and those changes will be reflected in their behavior.
Hmm.
So
Right.
people often don't know what their existing behaviors are, or
Hmm.
what would be the new behavior that they would
Hmm.
like to inculcate that will help
Hmm.
them create that change from the problem to the outcome.
Right.
right?
Yes.
And then there are
Hmm.
places where they may know the old behavior, they may also know the
Hmm.
new behavior, but they are
Hmm.
not sure how to go from the old behavior to the new behavior. And
Correct.
this behavior becomes our next
Hmm.
layer in terms
Okay.
of problem. So the first layer was understanding where they are and what they want to achieve. And second
Correct.
layer is about their behaviors.
All right. So, can we take a very concrete example to understand this?
Uh, all right. So let's say client wants to make more money.
Correct.
Now that is their B.
Right. That's where they
When
want to reach. Hmm.
perfect. So now
Hmm.
when we are talking to them and we
Hmm.
ask them uh, what stops you from making that money, and they say there's no time.
Hmm.
So they are doing something where they are losing
Hmm.
time, and that may not be
True.
productive enough for them, but they are not really
Correct.
aware of the fact that they are indulging in those particular behaviors.
Correct.
So that's the lack of awareness of their current behavior.
Hmm.
Then times when they actually know their current behavior. So there are people who say, I keep sitting and watching Netflix, or
Hmm.
I'm investing a lot of time in probably developing skills which will not be required for me in the coming years. Like, you know,
Hmm.
right now in COVID, there are so many people who would tell you that I am investing so much of time in watching webinars and videos and interacting with people online. But when you ask
Hmm.
them whatever skills they're developing, are those
Hmm.
skills something that are also helping them today, or will it help them in the near future? For a lot of them, they would tell you,
Right.
you know, this is like our way of constructively, productively investing our time.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
is that really a productive investment of time? Is that really going to be applicable in their life?
Hmm. Not really.
Right? And especially
Hmm.
for a client who is wanting to make more money, if they are
Hmm.
watching webinars on, let's say, 10 years into the future,
Hmm.
okay, without
Hmm.
really being able to understand what will be the strategy that they will follow to make more money going forward,
Hmm.
okay, or they're watching a lot of Netflix, then obviously
Hmm.
that's not something that's helping them, right, in their current behavior.
Correct. Correct.
Now, while they may be aware of these behaviors, when you ask
Hmm.
them what you need to do to move from A to
Hmm.
B, so you know what your
Hmm.
current behaviors are, but what should your new behaviors be? Many a times
Hmm.
they are not able to answer what the new behaviors will be,
True. True.
right? And that becomes another problem, that clients, while they may know that they need to change their behaviors, they don't really
Hmm.
know what would the new behavior be.
Correct.
And then finally, we may have a situation where a client says, I know what my new behavior should be, I know what my current behaviors are, but I just don't feel like doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, someone
Right.
who says that I want to manage my weight, I know I need to go to a gym, or currently in the lockdown, I know that in the house at least I need to do certain yoga, certain gym, certain physical activities that will help me manage my weight,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I know I
Correct.
keep sitting on a sofa like a potato and I'm not doing anything. So I'm aware of my current behavior, I'm aware of my new behavior.
Hmm.
When you ask them, are you able to
Hmm.
do that? And their answer
Hmm.
generally is no, I'm not able to
Hmm.
do that.
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
Right?
Right.
And you ask
Right.
them what stops you, and they would tell you, I don't know what stops me. It's almost like something inside me stopping me from taking those actions.
Hmm.
Right?
Correct.
And that's the reason why this becomes
Hmm.
our second layer of problem.
Correct. Right. Right.
Right?
Makes sense.
And the
Hmm.
second layer of our problem is behavior.
Hmm. Correct.
Does
Right.
that make sense?
It does. It does. Yes. Right.
Perfect. Now,
Right.
when we talk about behaviors, as I
Hmm.
said, there is what would be the reasons why people will not be able to change their behaviors when they know what should their new behavior be, what stops
Hmm.
them from applying that new behavior.
Mm, so, lack of motivation.
Lack of motivation will be one. That
Uh,
said,
yes. So there can
you
be
were
other
saying,
things. There can be
like,
other things. I know I have to go to the gym, and I may not have money to pay to have a personal trainer,
perfect. So resources,
or I may be simply feeling lazy.
the state. So predominantly, we can
Hmm.
divide all the problems that people face in terms of
Hmm.
not being able to change their behavior,
Hmm.
right, in four
Hmm.
categories.
Hmm.
And these four categories will be lack of clarity,
Hmm.
lack of resources,
Hmm.
lack of skills,
Hmm.
and lack of mental state.
Hmm. Okay.
Does this make sense?
It does. It does. But can we have
It does.
examples for each? Yeah.
Sure. I'll give you an example. Let me just check because someone has just shared a message saying that they're not able to join because of the link. So just give me a second if I can check that.
Yes. 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 Please. Yes. Please. In fact, there are two, three people. Three people saying it.
Sure. So I'll just check that so that I can share the right name. Meanwhile, all of you are on the video right now. If any of you would like to share or ask any questions till what we have discussed here, please go ahead and do that.
Hmm.
And meanwhile, while you are here, you can also share, say hi, and let us know that you're here. I have shared the link with all of them. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah. So where were we? You were asking me for an example for
Each of the four things that you said, lack of resources, skills,
perfect.
mental
So let's say
state. That.
someone perfect. So let's say someone who wants to again manage their weight says, I don't
Hmm.
know what steps can I take to reduce my weight or to manage my weight.
Mm-hmm.
Now that will be
Right.
lack of clarity,
Correct.
right? Or they may say that I know what steps to take. For example, I need to diet, but
Hmm.
I don't know what should my diet plan be like, which is again lack of clarity.
Hmm.
Then there are people who would say that I don't have the money to go to a dietitian,
Hmm.
so lack of resources, or go to a gym,
Right. Right.
right? There could be people who would say that so I know what food to cook, but
Hmm.
I don't know how to cook it.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be lack of skills,
Correct.
right? And then there are also
Hmm.
certain people who would simply tell you that you know what, I know all of
Hmm.
this, but when I look at healthy food, I just don't
Hmm.
feel like eating.
Correct.
Right? I look at junk food, I look at burgers and pizzas, and I feel like, oh, this is what I really want to eat.
Hmm. Right. So that will be mental state, right?
So that would be mental state. Make sense?
Right. Does absolutely. But Nitin, isn't it true that I can always get clarity by, say, talking to an expert or looking it up online? And when it comes to resources, I can probably arrange for resources if I really am looking forward to the outcome. I can develop the skills if I'm willing to work on it. And willingness is like a mental state, right? So, wouldn't it
Correct.
be fair to say that the actual problem because of which we are not able to change the behavior or reach our outcome or act in that direction is actually our mental state?
Which is true. And that's the next layer. So while resources and skills and clarity is
Hmm.
something that makes a lot of difference, right? But
Mm-hmm.
eventually, all of this boils down
Hmm.
to our mental state.
Correct.
Because if
And
I have
can
the
we
right
define
mental
the mental? Yeah.
sure. So before I define the mental state, so if we have the right
Huh.
mental states, for example, if I have the
Huh.
ability to manage my thoughts and my emotions, which is what we mean by mental state,
Right.
right? Now, if I have the ability to manage my thoughts and emotions, I can always speak to someone to get clarity.
Mm-hmm.
I can always join a course to be able to develop a skill, right? Or
Hmm.
I can always model someone else to develop the skills from them,
Correct. Oh
right?
yes.
But at the
Yes.
same time, and if I have the patience, which is again a mental skill or mental
Hmm.
state, right?
Hmm.
If I have that
Hmm.
patience, then I
Hmm.
can also take time to
Hmm.
develop resources so that I can go back to doing what I need to do. Even if money is a
Correct.
problem, it's not that you cannot earn more money, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
There's always a
Right.
possibility of you being able to do something else, spark certain things, earn more money, and then go back to doing what needs to be done.
True. True.
So all of this becomes a part of
Hmm.
mental state. And therefore, this is our next primary layer, which is
Okay.
mental state.
Right. Right. So
Does
you
it
were about, yes, yes, it does make sense. So you were about to define what mental state.
for us, mental state would be defined as specific thoughts or feelings that we are having at the
Mm-hmm.
time when we need to do something,
Right.
and that is stopping us from changing our behavior.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So,
Correct.
again, the idea, for example, if I want to wake up in the morning, while
Hmm.
waking up in the morning, if my first thought is 10 more minutes, or if I feel
Hmm.
lazy, that's what I
Hmm.
mean by our mental state. So, it includes both our thoughts and our
Hmm.
feelings. And the feelings will
Hmm.
include both our physical feelings and emotional feelings, but in
Hmm.
the moment in which I'm supposed to take action.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. So in this layer, we'll help people work with these thoughts and emotions, right?
Correct. So this is the layer where we start focusing on these real time thoughts and emotions, and we start learning how to work with them.
Right. So I understand that we need to do that, but how do we do that? I mean, it does not seem very easy, is it?
So the thing is, there are specific strategies that you can use to be able to manage thoughts and emotions, uh,
Right.
which which can help you deal with your thoughts and emotions in real time. There are
Hmm.
processes, and in each of the episodes going forward, we will look at more such what should I say strategies, right?
Okay. Okay.
But to give you an example, there are processes from CBT which will help you with thought restructuring.
Correct.
There are a lot of other processes that you can use. In NLP, there's a process called anchoring, which will help you change your emotional feelings or physical
Right.
feelings, right?
Right.
So there are
Right.
processes,
Right.
and we will discuss those processes in one of the episodes going forward. But the thing is that while there are specific techniques and processes to work with real-time thoughts and emotions, there
Right.
are places where only working with them is not enough,
Mm-hmm.
because they've
Yes.
become like so habitual that trying
Hmm.
to change those thoughts and emotions on a real time basis itself becomes a lot of work, a lot of conflict,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And that's the
Hmm.
reason why we at times have to go to the next layer.
Which is
And the next layer will be our beliefs, our values, what we call as positive intentions or secondary gains, which is what is basically powering our real time thoughts and our emotions and feelings.
okay. So can you once again take an example and help us understand this? These three things.
All right. So there are times when people have beliefs like I'm not good enough,
Right. Yes.
right? Now,
Very common.
the difference between this belief and a thought that I'm not good enough is that a particular thought is generally specific to a particular area,
Right.
right? But beliefs
Hmm.
generally would be reflected in multiple behaviors.
All
And that's the
right.
reason why it is far deeper than any thought. In fact, a belief will probably be wiring or powering multiple thoughts that we have.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay? And this is like an underlying assumption that we are making about ourselves, about our problems. Like, as I
Hmm.
said, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve something. These are all
Mm-hmm.
examples of belief.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
Then we have value, right? For example, my
Mm-hmm.
value is to help someone, but what if that attempt of helping someone is coming in the way of me being able to raise money for my child,
Hmm. True.
right? Now I
Hmm.
need to raise money for my child. That's
Hmm.
important for me. But I also have a
Hmm.
value that I need to help someone, and that value of helping someone in a particular moment can be
Hmm.
coming in the way of certain things that I need to do,
Right. True.
right?
Yes.
Then there is also places where values create conflicts. So there are places where people may have a value that I should never lie,
Hmm. Correct. Correct.
and then they may also have a value that I should always help someone.
Hmm.
Now,
True.
what if in order to help people they need to lie? There's a
Hmm.
contradiction or a conflict between the values that they have, right?
Hmm. True.
So being able to understand those values, being able to identify what value is more important, what value is less important for the client, that again becomes an important aspect of the problem that we are working with, doesn't it?
Correct. Makes sense.
Right? So that's value. Then it comes.
Hmm.
Then what we talk about is positive intention or secondary gain. A
Hmm.
lot of people in who have been traditionally trained in psychology would really
Hmm.
understand the word payback or a secondary gain, where certain
Hmm.
behaviors that we have actually help us fulfill certain other uh, purposes that we have in the background. Right? For example, a
Hmm. Hmm.
child crying constantly
Hmm.
it may be serving a purpose for the child, that the child is getting certain attention.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Now, if
Hmm.
you make the child stop without giving him or her the attention, then
Hmm.
would the child remain quiet for too long?
No, not really.
The moment that attention goes away from them, and if that attention
Hmm.
is really important for them, they
Hmm.
would again go into some other behavior which will create
True.
uh, a requirement for their attention, right? They would be able to get their
Correct.
attention that they require.
Correct. Correct.
There are people that you will come across who have at times aches and pains, and doctors have told you that those aches and pains are psychosomatic, that there is no physiological reason for it.
Yeah. Even after the injury has healed completely, they may still.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then you realize that there are times when you sit with them and their aches, their pains disappear.
Mm. Right.
But if you leave them alone,
Hmm.
generally happens with people who may be very senior, who are not getting the attention of their parents, or sorry, their kids or their relatives
Yes.
as much as they would like to.
Yes. Yes. True. True. True.
Right? Another
Hmm.
example is when you have kids who will fall sick during the exam, so they will study,
Hmm.
right? But just before the
Hmm.
paper, they'll fall sick.
Right.
And it doesn't happen once or twice, it's like a constant thing that's happening in their life.
True.
So payback becomes another important
Hmm.
layer, right?
Right.
Perfect.
Right.
So before I proceed ahead,
Hmm.
because we have covered the next layer, I actually want to
Hmm.
also check if any of the people have any questions about the layers that we have spoken till now, or if you can think of any examples in your life or the lives of people around you.
Hmm.
Or let's first talk about the fact that there are certain things that you want to do, but there are specific thoughts that are stopping you from doing it.
Hmm.
Right? Can you share one or two of those thoughts that you constantly have, which are stopping you from taking action? Things that you know you should be doing, but you're not able to do?
So Ekta says we know what is good and bad. Why we can't take that in our practical actions? One person, Atri Sharma say, Neetu says fear change.
Hmm.
Mm. Then Ayushi has asked how to avoid overthinking. These
Okay,
are three primary questions. Yes.
perfect. So, to answer those questions, why we are not able to do what we know is the right thing to do, again boils down to what are specific thoughts or emotions in the moment. So for example, there are places where people will tell you, I know this is the right thing to do, but I think I
Hmm.
can't do it, or I'm not able to
Hmm.
do it, or that
Hmm.
the consequences of doing it will be really bad. Mona Lisa mentions quitting smoking, which is actually a very good example. There are so many people who want to quit smoking,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
But the
Right.
thought or the emotion or the craving that they have just stops them from quitting it.
Hmm, 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 hmm. Yeah, so Dhwani has shared a thought. She says everything should be perfect. The thought that stops is everything should be perfect.
Which itself is a very good example, right?
Right, right. Tanya Jaspal says, I have a thought. I want to go about going ahead with ideas I have for a startup, but I constantly think what people will say it's a stupid idea, and what if it is actually a stupid idea?
Perfect. So these are all examples of our thoughts and our emotions coming in the way.
Hmm,
And
hmm,
that's the reason. And I hope you are all able to understand this, because if you are mental health practitioners, then it's
hmm,
extremely important to realize that yes, while creating a behavioral change is what will be your benchmark. That's your checkpoint, whether your therapy is successful or not. But in order to create those changes, at times you need to be able to work with underlying thoughts and emotions. And if you don't have the skills to do it, मतलब just
Hmm.
telling a client that don't think negative, सब ठीक हो जाएगा, anxious मत हो, वो बोलने से it doesn't work for them. You
Correct.
need to be able to have strategies to help them overcome that.
True. True.
Right?
Nitin.
I remember, just a second,
Yes.
Mamta, I remember someone
Yeah.
has asked, how
Please.
do we stop negative thinking or how do we stop overthinking? So,
Overthinking. Yes.
overthinking. So, the thing is, in this particular episode, we are just focusing on understanding the different layers of the problem so that we can cover that completely. And then in the next episode, we will actually also talk about what are the skills that you as a therapist need, how can you develop those skills so that we can kind of keep each of these episodes dedicated to particular topics.
Perfect. Perfect. Devanshi Parekh says urge for perfection. Probably stops her from executing a behavior.
Makes complete sense. So
Right.
I hope all of you are able to understand this. I
Yes.
think there are a couple of other people who have given examples.
Hmm.
I'm just going through it to check. Yeah. So I think whatever you have mentioned, this actually falls in that category of the real time thoughts and emotions that we have,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And then comes
Right.
the beliefs, the values, the positive intentions. So if maybe two or three of you can quickly give me certain examples of certain
Hmm.
beliefs that you know, or if you have worked with certain clients, beliefs that the clients have come up with, which have actually stopped them from being able to change or create the change that they want to create. That will be perfect. So that we all know that we understand what we are doing.
Hmm. Nitin, there is a question. I do get these thoughts, but I constantly keep taking action towards a goal, hoping this will automatically shift my thoughts and beliefs. Is that possible? Working on an initial layer and not working directly with the deeper one?
Okay. So, Tanya, that's actually a very good question that I was supposed to answer probably in another 15 minutes. But because you have raised it,
Hmm.
I may as well answer it right now. So,
Hmm.
it's true that there are times when we have certain thoughts and emotions, we are able to push them aside. It's like we are having a fight with ourselves, and then we are able to win that fight in a way in which we are able to take action. Right
Hmm.
now, will this be enough? That just depends. For some people, it is enough, where they are
Hmm.
able to just push aside their thoughts and emotions. They start taking actions, and those actions give them the desired results.
Hmm.
That kind of starts creating a change in their beliefs,
Hmm.
which then eventually will create a change in their automatic thoughts as well, right?
Correct.
But there are also places where people will tell you that I tried fighting with my thoughts, I kept pushing
Hmm.
them aside, I kept pushing myself to take action, that at one point it became so much that I gave up. It almost felt like, how long can I keep fighting with myself,
Hmm. So, Nitin,
right?
what will be a measure of how much effort? So here, uh, what I'm getting is that the kind of effort you are putting vis-a-vis the result that you're getting could be an indicator of whether you're working with the right layer. Is it, or do we have how do we check?
So, Mamta, the point is not just of effort, because at times effort also depends upon the goal that you want to achieve, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
The bigger the goal, obviously, the more you will have to work towards it. Not necessarily
Right.
in terms of time, but in terms of
Hmm.
how committed you are working towards it, right?
Correct.
Uh,
Correct.
that said, the
Hmm.
checkpoint that I keep for myself is this: that
Hmm.
if I'm trying to push my thoughts and emotions aside, and this is true even when I'm working with my clients, that if
Correct.
in 2 weeks they are
Hmm.
able to work in a way in which their new thoughts are becoming more automatic, probably 2 to 3 weeks at most, then I know
Hmm.
that them working on their thoughts real time is working for them. Then we don't really
Hmm.
need to work with deeper issues,
Hmm.
right? Because that in
Hmm.
itself probably is creating a change in their beliefs. But if after 3 weeks also, I would actually not even wait for 3 weeks. Maybe after 2 weeks also, if a client comes and tells me that, Nitin, there is, it's almost like a constant internal conflict that I'm going through,
Right.
right? And it's becoming too much for me to handle. Then that
Hmm.
itself is an indicator that I need to work with beliefs, because the client is like really struggling with pushing aside those thoughts.
Correct. Makes sense. Makes sense. Makes sense. Right. There is a question. I have a client who has put herself on a pedestal, but at the same time is low on self esteem now.
Ah, so that's actually a good one, because many a times, while we may have low self-esteem,
Hmm.
there are places where we use defense mechanisms. to be able to kind of protect ourselves from acknowledging that we have low self-esteem,
Hmm.
right? And then that also becomes important. So with beliefs and values, I would actually
Hmm.
also put defense mechanisms, because that's like a way for us to cover up our beliefs so that we are not able to work with them,
Right. Correct.
right? And in that case, being able to break through those defense mechanisms may be important. And that's also one of the things that we are going to talk about during this entire series, because for us this series is not about just focusing on one approach to therapy. The idea is how we can bring thought restructuring, for example, from CBT, defense mechanisms from psychodynamics and psychoanalysis, and a lot of other processes together to create a more wholesome, a more holistic approach.
Hmm. Correct, correct. We'll just take one more. There is a good example here, I think. I often do my
Hmm.
tasks to perfection. Otherwise, I just don't do them. So either I don't do it, and if it doesn't end up well, I mean, it doesn't end up perfect, then my motivation ends. I feel broken, uh, and takes me to extreme deep emotions, which I don't realize the cause and stop dealing with it. I think they're trying to say that they may not take certain actions because they're scared that they will not be able to do it to perfection. And if it doesn't really end perfect, then they again lose motivation for subsequent tasks, right? If
So,
I'm got
in
it.
fact, in my understanding, that's a very good example to connect to the next layer of problem that we have. That there are
Hmm.
places where, when we are able to work towards our outcome, we
Hmm.
work towards them, and
Hmm.
the beliefs and the thoughts and the emotions don't really come in the way because we are able to get consistent results. The
Hmm.
problem happens when all of a sudden something stops working for us,
Hmm.
and when that stops working, if we
Hmm.
are experiencing deeper, intense emotions,
Hmm.
then it's not just about working with our beliefs. It may
Hmm.
mean that we may need to go deeper to also be able to identify what our intense emotions are, not
Hmm.
run away from them, not push them aside, but actually acknowledge them, understand them, and be able to work with them. And that's
Hmm.
where a lot of processes from psychoanalysis or psychodynamics, and there are a lot of other release processes nowadays, catharsis
Hmm.
process nowadays, that will come into play.
Hmm. Right. 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 True. So what are these? So from behaviors we went to thoughts and emotions, and from thoughts and emotions to beliefs, values, and positive intentions and defense mechanisms, as you said. So what's the next level?
So, as I said, the next connecting layer would be that these beliefs, these values, these positive intentions, defense mechanisms are all connected to our past experiences. And in those
Right.
experiences, we experience certain intense emotions, certain traumas, which have
Hmm.
kind of impacted our lives at different points of time,
Right. Okay.
right? And
Okay.
in some cases, these deeper emotional traumas
Hmm.
would not be resolved if you're only working with your behaviors, beliefs, values, and intentions. You may need to
Hmm.
work with these emotions like separately, and many a times you may also have to work with past experiences
Right.
uh, to be able to work with these intense negative emotions.
Right. Very interestingly, Nitin, in fact, we have had two, three comments here, and everyone is talking about past experiences and past failures and past emotions. So I think it's like kind of the two things are tying together now. So can you give us an example of how a past experience can like affect somebody greatly in the present?
Okay. So there are two ways in which past experiences can affect us greatly in the present. One is
Hmm.
there could be a one-time event, but that may leave a very intense emotional imprint, something like a trauma, right?
Okay.
And the
Okay.
second one is something that may not leave like an intense trauma, but has happened repetitively and slowly and gradually. That emotion that I've
Hmm.
experienced has all
Hmm.
been clubbed together, and it's
Hmm.
now become uh, like a big suppression that I'm holding on to in my system,
Hmm.
right? So let's say
Hmm.
a client was insulted as a child in the school
Correct.
and felt vulnerable, or
Hmm.
yeah, or maybe someone who was molested, for example, as a child.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
These are examples of deeper emotional traumas, and depending upon what was the level of trauma, you may not even require repetition of this event. Only one time event may be enough.
Hmm. Correct.
Right? uh,
Right.
and then there are cases where there could be smaller events. So for example, uh, my father constantly kept telling me that I'm not good enough, right?
Hmm.
Or my family members kept constantly comparing with me with my cousins or with my brother and sister, or at
Hmm.
times even my neighbor,
Right.
right?
Correct.
I've had
Right.
situations where I've noticed situations where family members will actually compare the child with the dog and say that the dog is better than you, right?
Yes.
Or any other pet that they have in the family. And that's not to say whether the pet is better or worse. That's not the question. The question
Hmm.
is, imagine what happens to the child when the child is hearing that.
Exactly.
Now, if the child hears that constantly over a period of time,
Hmm.
then these smaller events can accumulate into some really large problems. It's like that small event is becoming bigger and bigger, and the overall
Hmm.
suppression is huge,
Right. Correct. Makes
right?
sense. Makes
and
sense.
and the thing is, at times when we are working with these intense negative emotions and traumas, many
Hmm.
a times these intense negative emotions and traumas may not even be something that the client remembers. They may be repressed in the client's memory.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
that's the next level of problem that we are working with. That if the intense negative emotion or the
Hmm.
trauma, while it's
Hmm.
stored in the system, is influencing the person's beliefs, person's values, their thoughts, their emotions, their
Hmm.
behaviors, and their ability
Hmm.
to achieve their outcome, uh,
Hmm.
what if they're not even aware of it? Then to actually be able to help them become aware of it,
Hmm.
help them deal with it,
Hmm.
that's another layer that you need to work with.
Right. Right. So then, are we saying that we'll have to work with all these layers with every client in order to bring about lasting change?
Okay, so before I answer that question, let me first summarize the different layers for
Correct.
everyone,
Right.
so
Right.
that
Right.
then we can actually talk about which layer to work with when,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, if I have to summarize it, the top layer would be the presenting problem that the client comes to us with.
Hmm.
One step beneath that would be the understanding of the problem and the solution that the client has.
Correct.
The next layer will be the behavior
Hmm.
that they want to change, whether they know those behaviors, whether they know the new
Hmm.
behaviors, and how to create a change in those behaviors.
Hmm.
The next will be the real time thoughts and emotions that we have,
Correct.
right? And to
Hmm.
be true, it's not just thoughts and emotions, it's thoughts and feelings. And these feelings will include our real time physical feelings and emotional feelings,
Right.
right? The next layer will then be about beliefs,
Hmm.
values, positive intentions, and defense mechanisms, as we put it.
Correct.
The next one would then be about past experiences and traumas that the client may remember, including the intense negative emotions that they have experienced.
Correct.
And the last, the deepest layer would probably be a memory that has been repressed,
Right.
right? So this
Right.
literally becomes like uh, the different layers of a problem. And as a mental health practitioner, if you really want to be able to work with clients, we
Hmm.
need to be equipped with skills to be able to work with each of them.
Correct.
Right? Now, does that
Yes.
mean that we need to work with all of them with every client? The answer is no. To be true, like I
Hmm.
answered to I think Tanya earlier into her question,
Hmm.
that there are
Hmm. Yes.
places where you will start working with the client and you just help them identify what their current situations are, what their goals are, and what is the plan of action that they need to execute. Once they know it, they
Hmm.
are literally able to go and apply. So if they are able to do it naturally, effectively, then no, you don't need to work with anything deeper. But then there are places where you'll realize that they know it, and yet they come back and they tell you in the next session that, you know what, I constantly have these thoughts and these feelings which are stopping me from taking action.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
then you
Hmm.
need to
Hmm.
be able to work with those thoughts and emotions, give them a week, let them go back and check if they're able to apply the things that they needed to apply. For the
Correct.
steps that they are able to take, you don't need to work on any layer deeper than that, because they are able to apply those steps, right? My
Hmm.
For me, the checkpoint for my clients would
Hmm.
be, what is the
Hmm.
specific thought and emotion that they're experiencing, uh, and is their ability to change the thought and emotion becoming more natural, more automatic, or do they have to constantly fight with themselves still?
Hmm.
If they are still fighting with themselves, or if they are still not able to apply the new behaviors, then in the next week, the sign is that I need to go deeper to the beliefs, values, defense mechanisms, and work with them.
Correct.
Right? If I
Right.
if I'm able to work with them in a way in which again the client is able to naturally create a change, brilliant. If not,
Hmm.
and if they complain that the emotion is very intense,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
at
Hmm.
times you will have clients who will in the first session itself, even before you start talking to them about behaviors, they would come
Hmm.
and they would start crying, and you know that there is this intense, deeper emotion that they're experiencing that they need to work with,
Correct.
right? So then in that case, you will also have to work with that deeper, intense emotion. And eventually, if they're not sure where is that emotion coming from, then you may have to
Hmm.
work with those past experiences, those repressed memories. The idea is if you can work with the with a surface layer, and the deeper layers don't need to be worked upon because the client is naturally able to create a change, then you don't need to go deeper. But even if you work with the repressed memories,
Hmm.
you will have to work with all the layers on top of it, because eventually the new behavior has to happen more sustainably, more naturally, more
Hmm.
effective.
Okay. So working with a deeper layer does not necessarily mean that the person would achieve the outcome. You still have to go through the sequence.
uh, at times when you're working with deeper layers, see, to be true, it also depends upon what processes you're following.
Right.
Many a times people do certain catharsis processes where they help people let go of certain deeper negative emotions, and they feel that that would be enough to help people create a change in their lives, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
In many cases that's not enough, because the problems that people are facing are also real time,
Hmm.
right? And at times they just don't have the skill sets required to be able to create a change. So unless you're able to
Hmm.
help them go back to that particular layer where they don't know what their skills are, you help them identify what those skill sets are, you help them develop those skill sets, only working with a deeper emotion may not be enough,
Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. So, Nitin, this
right?
gives us a very, yes, you were saying something.
So I was saying that just before were you asking me another question to the next layer, or were you asking something about what we have already discussed?
No, I was just kind of summing it up, like my understanding from this discussion, and
Mhm.
then I would like to take up a few comments and questions that are there. But please, you were saying something. Please finish it. Yeah.
No, so I was actually saying this, that I would also, while we are discussing this, I would like all the people who are watching this video right now to share with us if they've had experiences, or if they know of their clients who have had experiences where deeper past repressed memories or deeper emotional issues have actually stopped people from being able to create a change in their life. Especially when people come and say, "I know there is a problem, but I'm not able to pinpoint where this problem is coming from," and so on.
Right, right. So while we wait for people to comment, whatever we have discussed today, it's like given us a very thorough understanding of what we need to do when a client comes to us for therapy. You know, sometimes we are like bewildered because clients come with a literally a saga of their lives at times, right? So the understanding of the layers of a problem has also given me more clarity on how I can make my processes more systematic in therapy, as well as what I need to work with next if the client hasn't got complete resolution with whatever I have done so far, you know, in my sessions. So that's, I think, like we have kind of detangled the ball of wool, you know.
Perfect.
uh, right, I
I
think we
think there
have.
have been also some questions and so on. So if you could just check the questions and let me know so I
Yes,
can.
yes, yes, there are a lot of I'm going in reverse order. Tanya Jaspal says I have had cases where as we went deeper, uh, and we did only when it felt that there was the need to do so, the client backed out and stopped there and then, like they chose not to work further with it. Now the question is it my inefficiency as a professional not being able to work with them further, although I always ended with a small message that they can always come back and work further when they feel like.
So, is it your inability to work with the client? Partially, to an extent, yes. In that particular case, that doesn't mean obviously that that inability like would spread across to all your clients. It may be that in a particular case with a particular client, you probably
Hmm.
were not able to say something that would, or you were not able to interact with the client in a way in which they would probably understand how to go forward. Though I also understand that there are places where when you ask people to face their deeper challenges, they may actually tell you that I'm not ready for it right now, right? Then
Yes.
maybe it's
Yeah.
not about your skill sets. It is
Hmm.
true that at times clients may just ask you for a bit more time. For me,
Hmm. Hmm.
the checkpoint about skill sets of a therapist will be this: is the client in some time? When I say sometime, it's not like after 2 years. I basically mean in a week or two comes back to you and tells you that, I understand that I still need to work with this. And while
Hmm.
I may be scared of facing those challenges, those deeper emotions, but maybe
Hmm.
it's time for me to face that. If that happens, then your skill sets are completely in place. If not, then probably there are additional skills that you can develop, and that's true for all of us. None of us are like so skilled that we will always get results with all our clients. We are all growing and we are all learning in the process, right?
Hmm.
I hope, Tanya, that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. How can you ask a mother to not beat the child due to her stress, as that might create some setback?
Okay. So, actually, this is something that I would also bring back to what Tanya had asked. So, Tanya,
Hmm.
while I mentioned that there are places where clients may ask you for time, there are also places where clients are brought to you for session. Like in case of children, uh,
Hmm.
parents generally bring child for a therapy. When
Hmm.
it's not the child who actually needs therapy, many times it's the parents who need therapy,
Hmm.
right? There, our skill set as therapists is to be able to identify who is the one who actually needs that therapy and be able to
Hmm.
communicate that in a way in which the person understands that. Now, what I mean by this is, in parents and children's case, because the mother
Hmm.
in this case is bringing a child for therapy, the mother is there
Hmm.
in front of you. So you can sit with
Hmm.
the mother, explain to the mother how her behavior is influencing the child, and tell the mother that while I'll work with the child, I would need to work with you as well, because no matter how much I work with the child, eventually the child goes back to the home with you,
Hmm.
right? And unless I'm able to help you manage your stress,
Hmm.
I'm not really sure what is the best that we can do for the child in the long run. Now, the problem that parents face is, many a times we tell parents that you need to manage your stress, but see, even they don't know how to manage their stress, right? It's very
Exactly.
it's very easy to tell someone don't get angry, count 10 down to 0. People will tell you that's what we don't remember when we are angry.
Hmm.
So unless you can work with the mother in a way in which she can remain calm
Hmm.
as naturally as she was getting stressed,
Hmm.
no
Hmm.
matter
Hmm.
what you do, that will not be enough. And
Hmm.
therefore, that's where your skill as a therapist comes in. It's not to tell the parents that their stress is, or they are beating up the child. Parents understand that. I'm sure there are very, very few parents who actually want bad for their kids. I haven't come across them, but I'm sure there could be exceptions,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Most
Hmm.
parents
Hmm.
are looking for the welfare of the child. It's just that the parents themselves don't know how to manage themselves well. So that's where, if you
Exactly.
can help the parent understand that you have strategies, processes that will help the parents manage their thoughts and emotions naturally, in a way in which they are not as stressed as they were earlier, they'll be more than happy to continue with you for a session.
Right. They need to understand that they can also learn to manage that stress, and they are not simply being told to somehow overcome that stress. Right.
Perfect. Perfect.
Right.
Right.
Nitin,
I
there was
hope that
another.
answers both the
Yes.
questions about
Yes.
the child and
Hmm.
Tanya's question originally that she asked.
Right. There was another question about resistant parents, where Krutika says, I've had, especially had to handle a lot of resistance with parents when it comes to domestic violence and child sexual abuse cases.
Uh, Okay, so again, there you will have to actually work with the parents. And when you're
Hmm.
working with the parents, so this is generally what I do.
Hmm.
When parents bring a child to me for a therapy, I
Hmm.
would tell the parent that one of the parent mandatorily has to come for a therapy with the child. Obviously, they are coming for two separate sessions. So in the child
Hmm.
session, the parents are not there. In the parent session, the child are not there. The child is not there.
Hmm.
These are two
Hmm.
separate sessions that are happening. But it's
Hmm.
mandatory, and I don't work with the child unless one of the parents also decides to come for a therapy. I understand. I've been told earlier that, Nitin, why are you not helping the child if the child is at least
Hmm.
coming for a therapy and so on?
Hmm.
The thing is, when I
Hmm.
start working with the child, I've realized that parents, even those parents who are considering that they should come for
Hmm.
a session, they stop considering
Hmm.
because they think that he has at least taken the child for a session and he'll do what he needs to do. And then parents start thinking that because the child is coming to you for therapy or getting paid for working with the child, or even if you're doing a free session, it's almost like it's your responsibility no matter what the parents do. And you are not the one living with the child. So you have to work with the parent. So I make it a prerequisite for a parent that if I'm going to work with the child, one of the parent has to come to me for the session. And if a parent says no and they tell me there are other practitioners who are willing to work with the child directly, I tell them you can please go ahead, go to those practitioners. If they are able to help your child in a way in which the child can sustainably improve, I'll be more than happy, right? But if you feel that that's not work, then you can come back to me later realizing that we still have to work with you. Most of them eventually come back.
True. That does make sense. That does make sense. Um, okay, another question about a child. I think the client feared talking to everyone and would try to be polite. In the childhood, father used to have a lot of family fights with uncles. They would fight a lot. Later's father behavior became similar with his own family. So the client even today fears if someone's shouting or he talks politely, fumbles, fearing the person would shout back, cannot answer, his mind stops working, he gets angry on himself, would do a lot of self-talk, pretending as if answering back.
So, all right. When we actually do the episode on working with intense negative emotions, and we talk about specific techniques, I'll actually probably make a note of this question and answer it there also.
Hmm.
But just to give you the reference right now,
Hmm.
there's in when we are working with intense negative emotion, there's a concept of inner child, which is
Hmm.
basically about in a part in a version of us stuck with certain traumas, certain intense emotions, and then in future when certain triggers come, that child takes over, and when that child takes over,
Hmm.
then we start behaving like we were behaving as small childs. While logically we know that we are grown up,
Hmm.
but still our behavior is kind of still revolving around the way we would have behaved when we were a small child. I mean, there are cases
Correct.
where there are people who are like 6 feet tall, scared of their father who is probably 5'2", 5'3", and yet in their head they feel that my
Hmm.
father is so huge because they are
Hmm.
still looking at the father from the view of that inner child,
Correct. Makes sense.
right?
Makes sense.
So to be able to tap into that inner child, to be able to help the client speak to the child, to be able to help the child let go of the emotion and work with them, is something that
Hmm.
we will talk about in one of the other episodes, where it's like a complete process in itself. So even if I share it with you right now, it
Right.
will probably not
Right.
be enough, and then we kind of
Yes.
derail the current topic that we are working on.
Right, right. I would like to once again mention that today we have only spoken about and discussed about the various layers. How to work with each of these layers will come in subsequent episodes in the series. We will work with each level of the problem. Nitin, there is another question. Does it matter how much the client sees a problem or their perspective regarding goal achievement?
Well, that's all that really matters actually, and that's all that we are really working with. Eventually, any problem that the client has is a problem that exists in their map,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
There's this expression that we use from NLP, which is called map is not equal to territory. What it
Hmm.
simply means is that what we think is real is not necessarily real. There is a difference between objective reality and subjective reality, right? In classical psychology, this is generally explained with the help of schemas. So there are
Hmm.
schemas that we have in our head, and we operate out of those schemas,
Yes, yes,
right?
correct,
So what we are
right.
really working with is the client schema. What we are working with is the client's perspective. But our skill set as mental health practitioners is that
Hmm.
we are able to help them identify aspects of their schemas, aspects of their perspective that they were not exploring earlier. Again, in NLP,
Hmm.
this is called generalization, deletion, distortion, where you're actually able to help them break through this.
Correct, right.
And then, along with that,
Hmm.
you are also able to work with them in a way in which, while they're creating a shift internally in their perspective, the shift
Hmm.
needs to be comprehensive enough so that it creates a change in their external behavior. It's able to help them change aspects of their external reality that they would really like to change. Because
Hmm.
any change which is only internal, which does not create an external uh, reflection, I don't think is a complete change. Then we are kind of kidding with ourselves. And that's one of the things that we as therapists have to be careful about. There are times when clients will come and tell you at the end of the session that I'm feeling better. But
Hmm.
when they actually go back to their life doesn't change. Nothing in their life changes, and their ability to deal with the situation also doesn't improve. that is not really a resolution, only because the client feels better is at times just a temporary relief that they're experiencing. They would eventually end up having a problem again if they've not developed the right skills, and that skills again becomes a part of uh, whether they recognize those skills as a part of their perspective and how they work with that.
That that I think answers the question. Nitin, there are two questions by the same person. I'll take them together.
Hmm.
Shri Jota Chakrabarti says at times past failures come to us even when we are struggling on with present goals. We may find ourselves getting demotivated by our past. How do we work with that? And she also wants to know that sometimes trauma may even motivate us. So how do we define how do we draw the line between trauma motivating us and trauma harming us?
Okay. So see, not all trauma needs to be worked upon. Well, true be true, since the time I was a child till today, I'm sure there have been experiences that have happened that may be traumatic for me, at least from the point of view of a child. As an adult today,
Hmm.
I may not see them as a trauma, but for the child, it was traumatic.
Hmm.
Do I need to work with all of them? Probably no. Uh,
Hmm.
but if there is a particular goal that I want to achieve, or if there is a particular problem that I'm facing that I want to resolve, that I'm not able to resolve,
Hmm.
okay, and that is where I'm experiencing deeper, intense emotion, then that
Hmm.
is a trauma that I need to deal with. So that will be the difference between a trauma motivating me enough in a way in which I don't get bothered by it, but I'm
Hmm.
actually able to take action in a way in which I'm able to achieve the outcomes that I want to achieve.
Hmm.
Right? Uh,
Right.
at the same time, if the trauma is hindering me, is stopping me from taking action, it's kind of playing up in my mind in a way in which I constantly feel bad or sad about it, then it is
Hmm.
something that I need to work with. Uh,
Hmm.
Going back to the earlier question that you asked, which was about uh, childhood traumas at times surface in the adulthood, and
Hmm.
how do we
Interfere with present goals.
correct, and what do we do about that situation? So that's
Hmm.
where, if if you're a mental health practitioner, if you're asking this question from the point of view of how do I work with a client, then that's
Hmm.
where certain techniques from psychodynamic psychoanalysis will come into play. There are certain
Hmm.
processes from hypnosis that you can combine with the classical process of psychoanalysis to get
Hmm.
like really the benefits of psychoanalysis with the speed of hypnosis. It's like really brief and really quickly that you can work with them. So those are processes that you can use if you
Hmm.
are asking this question from the point of view of a client, that you are a client and you are facing the situation, what can you do? My suggestion, please go and visit a therapist. Deeper traumatic issues which are kind of surfacing in adult life, which you are not able to handle, are best addressed by visiting a therapist.
Right, right. That also, I think, answers her the most recent question that she has asked. There was another question about somebody saying that what to do if someone can't trust their spouse because of their past relations affecting them a lot.
So what can you do? You need to be able to. So again, if you are asking it from the point of view of a client, then you need to be able to let go of it. If you are not able to let go of it, then visit a therapist. A good therapist would generally have tools and techniques to help you get over those past relationship issues. The bottom line is to be able to release the emotions that you may have experienced in that situation, that you may have suppressed, learn from those experiences and apply those learning in your life. If you are a therapist and you're asking this question, how do I work with a client who is not able
Hmm.
to get over their past relationship? Then that's exactly
Hmm.
the same answer. If you're asking for specific strategies, then we will have a separate episode dedicated to that
Hmm.
in terms of how you can combine different fields of therapy together to deal with that. But eventually, the summary of it would be this: help the client identify the sequence of events, sequence of relationships, help them let go of the emotions associated to it, help replace those emotions with something more positive, and then help them learn certain things that they can apply in their current life. And all of this needs to be done in a way in which the learning and the new positive emotions that they're
Hmm.
experiencing. And when I say positive, it's not just positive or negative, it's more like functional. The new functional emotions are experienced by them naturally and automatically.
Perfect, perfect. I think we have answered all questions. If something's left, then we'll
So
come
I
back
can see
to the
there's
same
one
thread.
last question that I think
Right.
we have left, which was about Kritika asking that her previous question with respect to kids and parents was related to resistant parents. Uh,
Yes.
So, as I said, for me, dealing with resistant parent would mean me letting them know how the child's current behavior, if not addressed correctly, will come back to haunt the parents in future, and make the parents realize that unless you work with your behavior, the child's behavior will not change in the long run. So what I do is kind of, it's almost like a very subtle threat that you're giving them, in which they're realizing that not working on themselves today would probably mean that the child will uh, take their own revenge in future in very subtle ways, right? And that in most cases makes the parents feel threatened enough to continue for a session. But again, the point is not whether parents come for session or not, because if you're able to explain it to them, parents would come to you for at least the first session. The idea is, can you convince them that you will be able to help them manage their thoughts, manage their emotions, manage their anger, manage their stress levels naturally, so that they don't have to struggle with themselves. If coming to a therapy means that the client has to struggle with themselves, they will not continue with therapy. And this is the biggest difficulty that people face with classical therapy, that going to a therapist means me struggling with myself. And that's a skill that the therapist needs to develop, where this conflict can get resolved without struggle, or at least with as little a struggle as possible.
Correct, correct. I think that also, Tanya, when Tanya was talking about inefficiency and efficiency as a therapist, I think this also relates to her question. Right. I think, Nitin, that brings us to wrapping up today's episode. It was a lot of insights, a lot of understanding, almost a power-packed first episode. And what are we talking about in tomorrow's episode?
uh, so Mamta, in tomorrow's episode we will look at uh,
Hmm.
why an eclectic approach is necessary for us to be able to work with all of these layers. That's the first one. What would
Right.
that eclectic approach be like? Can you
Hmm.
really have a truly eclectic approach? What will be the basis on which you will integrate different fields of therapies together?
Right.
Also, what are the skill sets that therapists probably would need to develop to be able to use this eclectic approach properly? So
Perfect. I've
just
already.
before we, so Mamta, just before we end this session, I also want to like clarify that while a lot of you may be on this uh, live session who may not be therapists, please remember that we have created this masterclass keeping in mind therapists. And a lot of
Hmm.
things that I'm going to talk about will be in a way in which we are guiding therapists sequentially, systematically, so that they can understand first the different layers, then the eclectic therapy, and then how each of these therapies can be combined, and eventually how you can bring them together. So, if you
Hmm.
are looking at resolving your own problems through these episodes,
Hmm.
I am not sure that is what these episodes will help you achieve, right? But
Yes.
if you are looking at understanding, like having a systematic understanding of working with clients, then I would recommend please join us for each of the sessions, because every session would take you deeper into how you can work with the client, how an eclectic approach is probably the most effective approach, and eventually how you can create the eclectic approach, right?
Perfect.
And just before I close, sorry, Mamta, because I've just seen a
Mhm.
comment where
Okay.
someone has asked, can we summarize or can we list all the layers one more time? So I am listing those layers one more time for the benefit of everyone who is watching, and you can make a note of it if you would like to, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
the the first layer for us is the presenting problem that the client brings to us.
Hmm.
The second layer is the client's ability to understand that problem and the solution that they want to achieve.
Hmm.
The next layer revolves around their behaviors, which is what is
Hmm.
the current behavior that they want to change, what will be the new behavior that they want to inculcate, and how they can make the transition from the old to the new behavior.
Hmm.
The next layer will be about our thoughts and feelings, which are in real time, including emotional feelings and physical feelings.
Hmm.
The next layer is our beliefs, values, positive intentions, and defense mechanisms.
Hmm.
Next is our deeper, intense emotions, traumas, uh, and the series of experiences that have led to that suppression.
Hmm.
Lastly is repressed memories, resulting in traumas and emotions, the client may not be aware of them. So the repressed memories will become like the last, the deepest layer that we would work with. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, yes, yes. Exactly.
Right? Brilliant. So
Correct.
I had a lot of fun having this conversation with you, Mamta. I hope everyone
Same
enjoyed the
here.
conversation as much as I enjoyed.
Yes, we have a
And
lot of comments saying that people liked it. And I'm already looking forward to the next episode. So we'll take this forward tomorrow where we'll talk about why an eclectic approach, how can it be done, what are the skills a therapist would need, and so on.
okay. And someone has asked about my contact details and so on. So I'm just sharing my contact number. Any of you who would like to, please feel free to get in touch with me, and we can obviously have a conversation about something that you would like to have.
Hmm.
I'm also sharing our website, which basically includes details about the different activities that we do. If you are interested, you can please go through the same as well. Right? And lastly, I'm going to do a shameless promotion, a plug. We have just published a book, Destiny of Choice. It's not a book for therapists, so as to say, that's basically, it's more a self-help guide. But if you're a therapist who is really, really interested in understanding how people's life can help them learn certain things, and if you're really interested in both actually a sweet love story, and you're also interested in a self-help guide, then you would really find that book useful and interesting. um, I probably should have shared a link for that book, but I don't have that link handy right now. But you can just search on Amazon, Destiny of Choice by Nitin Shah, and you should probably be able to search that book. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you in the session tomorrow. And Mamta, thank
Yes.
you for hosting us and for
Thank
asking the
you,
questions that you asked.
Nitin, for answering all the questions very patiently. We'll be bombarding you with a lot more tomorrow, I'm sure.
I'll be more than happy.
Right. So, everybody who is tuned in, same time, the link remains the same, Nitin?
The link, if you've joined the webinar, as in you have registered on the ICHARS website, then link would remain the same, the website link. Otherwise, I would also share the link with all of you in the WhatsApp group that you have become a part of. If you are not a part of that WhatsApp group, then I've left my number. Please drop me a message and I'll add you to that WhatsApp group.
Right. And one more thing, if you know of other mental health professionals who you think can benefit from this, please do spread the word. Please share with them the link so that they can go and register for the webinar.
And please
Uh,
do watch parties every time we begin with these sessions.
yeah, it does make sense. I'm sure a lot
Yeah.
of professionals are also connected to other psychologists, therapists, and practitioners. So this is going to be a great help.
Thank you.
So good night, everyone. Signing out for today. See you tomorrow, same time, same place.
So thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.